From divides that somehow made chores even more annoying, to time machines that projected the past. These are 9 devices that got lost in time, but the Dutch people still remember them. Number 9. The wringer. Long before the fancy laundry rooms of 2026, the Dutch wasdag, or as most of you would know it, laundry day. It was an all-day event, which felt more like physical work than just a simple chore. The centerpiece of this struggle was the wringer, often clamped onto a wooden tub or put on the top of a primitive electric washer. This device was essentially 2 heavy rubber rollers operated by a hand crank. Your job? To guide soaking wet heavy sheets and clothes between those rollers to squeeze out the excess water. It was a test of your strength and your focus. There was also a certain danger to the wringer. Just ask any Dutch grandmother. Almost every one of them has a story about a finger almost getting caught or a button being crushed into dust. So remember, when we think of clean today, we think of pressing a button, but back then, clean meant sore arms and a damp kitchen. Number 8. The coal stove. If you lived in a Dutch neighborhood in the 1950s, the smell of kolen, Dutch for coal, was the permanent perfume of winter. Central heating back then was a luxury for the ultra-rich. For everyone else, there was the coal stove, usually a black cast iron beast sitting in the middle of the living room. Living with a coal stove was a whole lifestyle you had to adapt to. You had to lug a heavy metal coal scuttle from the shed or cellar every single day. The dust got everywhere, and the heat, it was intense, but incredibly cozy. That is, if you were in the same room as the stove. You'd be roasting in front of the stove, while your breath turned to mist in the hallway or the bedroom. The ritual of poking the fire and emptying the ash pan every morning was the price paid for a cozy evening. It was a messy, physical connection to the warmth of your own home. Number 7. The tube radio. Before Spotify, the radio wasn't just a background noise, but a piece of fine furniture. Inside the radio, vacuum tubes acted like little heaters. You'd flip the heavy switch and wait. For a good 30 seconds, nothing would happen. Then, a soft amber glow would emerge from the black, and a low hum would gradually transform into the sounds. Tuning was an art form. You turned a heavy-weighted dial, watching a needle glide across a glass plate printed with exotic fancy names. Paris, London, Brussels, Hilversum. If you were feeling rebellious, you'd try to catch the signal of Radio Veronica, the pirate station broadcasting from a ship in the North Sea. The sound was warm, bassy, and crackly. Some of the things that digital audio just can't replicate. It was the window to the world, and it demanded you sit down and truly listen to it. Number 6. The rotary phone. In the mid-century Dutch home, the phone didn't live in your pocket, it required its own furniture, mostly a small dedicated table in the cold hallway. The most iconic of these was the PTT T65, a heavy grey plastic block with a coiled cord, which you would almost greet as a person from time to time. Making a call was a commitment. You didn't tap a contact, you inserted your finger into the hole for a number and wound the dial clockwise until it hit the metal stop. Then you waited. The dial had to spin all the way back before you could do the next digit. If you were calling someone with lots of 9s and 0s in their number, it took a solid minute just to finish dialing. There was no privacy, as everyone in the house could hear your side of the conversation. But like everything else on this list, it had a special feeling to it. Number 5. The record player. As the 60s rolled in, the suitcase record player became the ultimate symbol of youth. It was a miracle back then. I mean, it's essentially a record player built into a sturdy little box with a handle. You could take your music to a friend's house provided you were careful not to bump it and skip the needle. There was a specific ritual to it, which was enjoyed by many. Carefully sliding the vinyl out of its paper sleeve, holding it only by the edges, and gently lowering the tone arm. The crackle before the music started was the sound of anticipation. Whether it was your parents' record or the latest Beatles 45, the record player was the first time people had total control over their own soundtrack. Number 4. The black and white television. When the first TV sets arrived, it was a whole family event. These were massive wooden crates with tiny curved glass screens. Like the radio, they needed to warm up. You'd turn the knob and wait for a tiny white dot in the center of the screen to expand into a grainy grey image. Because there were only one or two channels, the whole country watched the same thing at the same time. If the signal was bad, someone had to go outside or climb onto the roof to wiggle the antenna while someone inside yelled, "Stop! No, back! Okay, stay there!" People would literally pull their chairs up in a semicircle, turning away from each other to stare at the screen. It was the death of the old-fashioned conversation and the birth of modern media culture, all contained in that box. Number 3. The slide projector. In the 70s and 80s, if you went on vacation, you didn't post a story, you hosted a dia avant, literally meaning a slide evening. This involved dragging out a heavy projector and a folding white screen that never quite stood up straight. The room had to be pitch black, the projector would whir, its internal fan blowing hot, dusty air into the room. Then a giant bright photo of your uncle standing in front of a tent in France would appear. The slides were often upside down or backward, leading to a comedy of errors as the host tried to fix them without melting the film under the hot bulb. There was a specific smell to a slide projector. If you know, you know it. It was slow, it was often boring, but it was how memories were shared. Number 2. The reel-to-reel recorder. For the true gadget lover, the reel-to-reel was the pinnacle of home tech. Seeing those two large plastic reels spinning slowly was hypnotic. This was the original creator tool. You'd use it to record songs off the radio while praying the DJ wouldn't talk over it, or it was used to record the family's voices. There was something magical about seeing your own voice represented as a magnetic strip of tape. If you wanted to edit, you had to literally cut the tape with a razor blade and stick it back together with special adhesive. It was a hobby that required steady hands and a lot of patience, and it usually sat in the living room as a glowing testament to the family's modernity. And finally, number 1. The film projector. The final boss of nostalgic Dutch appliances was the film projector. While the slide projector showed stills, the Super 8 projector brought life. This was the peak of luxury. These films were usually silent, flickering, and slightly yellowed, but seeing your parents as children running through a park in 1964 was nothing short of magic. The projector made a frantic, rhythmic rattling sound, similar to that of an old-school sewing machine. You'd sit in the dark watching the jittery footage, often providing your own live narration. There was no undo button, meaning if the projector jammed, the heat of the lamp could literally melt the film in seconds, leaving a bubbling brown hole in your memories. It was fragile, expensive, and beautiful. It was the closest thing to a time machine the 20th century ever invented. Looking back at these 9 devices, it's clear that technology used to be more human because it required us to be involved. Today we have more convenience, but perhaps a little less magic.